All right, so we're back and we're cooking protein. So we have an animal-based protein to show you and also a vegan-based protein to show you. So I think both of you are gonna get pans heated up. Do you wanna get oil heated up or is it ready?
It is almost ready.
Great. So the animal protein we're gonna cook today is lamb.
Lamb.
Awesome, and Charlie's gonna show us how to do that.
This is leg of lamb that I purchased from a local farm, Sky Pilot Farm here in Longmont. And there's also Boulder lamb. And you can buy whole or halves of lamb. And this is a lamb leg that has been cut into a steak. And you can see this is I don't know, maybe 1.5 pounds of meat. This is a lot of meat here. I have a lightly oiled pan. And generally in the eating regimen taught in Food is Your Best Medicine, it is one that includes animal or vegetable protein, but includes them both. And am I getting this too hot?
Yeah.
You're going to be good and warm.
All right, I'll turn it off for a minute.
It's probably good.
Yeah. And with low amounts of oils, generally 2 tablespoons to perhaps as much as 4 tablespoons a day, but Beeler was 2 tablespoons or less. So hence, this is just lightly oiled here. And I'm going to add this to it. And that is hot. I need to wait for that to cool down. So otherwise, it will stick. I can put it in and let it sear. Now, so while I'm waiting for it to cool, Henry Beeler served his patients meat that was rare. He encouraged them to cook it rare and not to cook it medium well, or well done. And this is based on one study for sure by a man named Francis Pottinger. And Francis Pottinger, to make it short, did experiments with cats, which are straight carnivores. And he divided the cats into 3 different groups. One of them eating raw meat, another eating meat that was cooked at about the level of medium, and another one that was well done. And he did the same thing with milk proteins. And what he found was that in the first group given raw meat, that they thrived. Their health was beautiful, their coats were beautiful, and they were healthy. The second group degenerated about half as much as the third group, and they degenerated in the same way as our bodies degenerated. Their joints degenerated, their fur and skin degenerated, became thin, had dandruff, became subject to fleas and to other pests or parasites. Their digestion became troubled. They would get colds, pneumonias, all the ways that humans get sick. And the third group, all the more so. And so there were other conclusions drawn, meaning that the third group got to the point, I think at the second or third generation, where they could no longer reproduce. The point being that the more protein is cooked, animal proteins and fats as well, but the more the proteins are cooked, the more they are destroyed and they actually become toxic to the body. And so I encourage my patients as well to train your taste for what is good for you, and gradually to reduce the amount that you cook animal proteins so that they don't become poisonous to you. Okay. All right, I'm gonna put this in and there we go.
Sounds good.
That sounds good then. It sounds a lot better. Now, you can also, in plant-based nutrition, in the paleo diet, in my tradition with Henry Beeler and with Max Gerson, there is no salt that's used. And a no salt eating regimen, if you're used to eating salt, is about as hard a thing to do as I know of.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Like salt is, try doing without salt, and not just the salt that we would add to food, but the salt that is in all salad dressings and all these dressings we've shown here, in all sauces, in cheeses, salt in bread, salt's in everything. And the benefits of a salt-free diet have been shown, and I agree with it. And I'll say also that in nutrition today, they're divided about everything. Like whether salt's good for you or not, you have people taking both poles, right? Claiming that science proves definitively that salt is either good for you and necessary or bad for you. The same thing is true of milk. The same thing is true of eating meat. There are people that swear that eating meat, it's just poisonous to you and the cause of many diseases. What else is there that there's...
That's polarizing.
What?
That's yeah.
I mean, almost any issue you can
Yeah,
take in
oil,
nutrition. Yeah. The,
carbohydrates in general.
yeah, it's
Yeah. Which I think brings it back to the fact that I think we've talked about too that there's not one way of eating that works best for everybody or that works best for everyone throughout their entire life. Because as your body changes, so too do your nutritional needs change, or if you're going through a stressful time and you have lower digestive fire, then maybe you need easier to digest foods versus other times. And that's I think the beauty of all these controversies is there isn't one right way to eat other than to eat the way that's healthiest for you and to explore what that is.
yeah, explore if you're sick under some expert guidance.
Yes.
Because trying to learn it all over for yourself is like trying to learn piano or something.
Yeah.
You might learn it if you're really diligent, but otherwise. And food is your best medicine. The core of the course is teaching us how to discover what is right for our bodies. And it's a brilliant methodology that includes the elimination of allergens, the reintroduction of them to see how our body responds, and also fasting to purify our bodies, develop a sensitivity so that we can discern with much greater clarity what foods and what amounts work for us and what don't. Yeah. All right, I'm going to call this good. Now, here's what I would do with this. I would flavor it some. I'm not going to flavor it right now because it doesn't make any difference. I would take this and put it here. If I'm going to eat some, I'd cut off what I'm going to eat and eat it like one would eat a steak. However, otherwise, I would cut it up into bite-sized pieces and put it into a glass container and take it with me, and I'll show you more about that. I carry glass containers in a bag that I call a good food bag, which I encourage all of you to get, and we'll talk about that further. Wow, okay, and
Perfect.
Anderson's going to prepare pum fu.
Yeah, so we're going to do some pum fu here. And I think this oil's probably pretty warm. I'm going to add a little bit of the simple sauce that we made up just one video ago. And we're at about the perfect temperature. It's not kicking back up at me too bad. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of that. And then we'll go ahead and turn the heat back up on this, and it'll get to sizzling, I would imagine, pretty quick. Then we're going to throw in pum fu. And pum fu, for those of you who have never heard that term before, is just tofu made with pumpkin seed. So it's literally the same type of thing. They cook the pumpkin seeds, and then they blend them up down to a paste, and then they press them together. But the ingredients are just pumpkin seed and water.
Here's what it is.
And it is amazing.
Pumpkin seed and walnut.
Water.
Water.
Yeah. And you can eat this raw. It is a bit better if you cook it, but you can also eat this raw.
Starting to kick just a little bit here. Perfect. And then, sure.
Or do you want to?
Spatula, probably.
Okay. Meddlers.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. So if you get the oil too hot and you have that liquid in there, it's gonna wanna pop and spread oil all over the place, which is kind of what it did there for a second. But it's not too bad. Oh, what I'm doing, I'm turning the pumfu. So tofu, or pumfu, much like tofu, is very absorbent of the flavors around it. Now what I would say is, normally you need to flavor tofu for it to have really any flavor. With pumfu, not quite the same. Pumfu does have an amazing flavor on its own. I wouldn't say it's identical to pumpkin seed because it is cooked, but yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, it kind of has a nutty flavor. Or a seedy flavor.
Yeah. And then once you get to the point where you feel like most of the flavor or all of the pumfu looks like it's absorbed some of the flavor, then go ahead and spread it out flat if you can. Okay. And you'll let it just go ahead, and you might want to back the heat down here a little bit as you're doing this. Sometimes it can take a little bit of time. And I'm hoping that there's enough space on the bottom of this pan for everybody to lay flat. We intentionally just did 2 loaves based on the size of the pan. This is a 12-inch fry pan. And there's still a little bit of moisture in there from the sauce that we add, the simple sauce that we added. It does smell amazing also. Almost everything's flat. I appreciate you all having patience with me as I flatten every piece of tofu. And there I stood one up. Some of the benefits of pumpkin seed, as opposed to soy, include pumpkin is really good for the prostate. So I think 50% of men over 50 have benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is the overgrowth of your prostate. This is, again, benign, so it's not that it's a life-threatening condition or anything like that, but it can cause certain symptoms. So it can cause increased urination or urgency to have to go, also causing pressure in the perineal region. So, what else to say about pumpkin seed? It is full of many essential fatty acids, just like soy.
Yep, and zinc.
And zinc.
And
it is high in zinc.
Zinc and magnesium. Yeah, really great plant-based source of zinc.
And I'm going to step in and say for BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, for swollen prostates and urinary frequency and urgency, right? That Bieler maintained, and we teach the model in Food is Your Best Medicine, naturopathic model of toxemia and poisoning of the blood. And that what happens is when our blood becomes poisoned through myriad different processes, that the body seeks an avenue for elimination, which may be the sinuses or the lungs or the skin. But one of the avenues for eliminating poisons from the male body is through the prostate and through the urinary. And so the toxic which he felt were largely byproducts of overcooked protein. In fact, irritate the prostate, right, cause inflammation, it swells, and then one is unable to urinate, and the whole sequence of problems flows out of that. So as MDs, like one portion of it is exactly what the course is, which is a balanced eating regimen, but also fasting. And then I train men in the use of sitz baths, cold sitz baths, and self-massage of the urethra, the prostate area, something else that has to do, it is, I train them in how to be able to relax the bladder and the prostate through breathing while they're urinating, and actually train them in that, have them drink abundant amount of water and learn to be able to do this. And it really orients them, towards that area of their body and healing.
That's amazing.
It's so cool.
And then once that's gone for a couple minutes, I'm going to go ahead and flip them. And we may not be able to tell. Yeah, they've slightly started to brown. We don't want to overcook this, so we'll just go ahead and flip it as best we can. If you want to take a lot of time with it, you can flip every piece individually, or try to make sure that every piece has been flipped. We're not going to do that today. That would be very much a test of all of our patience. If you do take the time to flip every piece, they turn out like little sandwiches with a slightly crisp layer on each end, and very nice and soft in the center. So we'll get most of them there, but I'm not going to take time to do that. Although it looks like I'm starting to take time to do that.
Okay, just to point out, the method of cooking that he took with this is to put the sauce in first, toss things in them, and then let them cook, versus a lot of recipes will say fried tofu and then add sauce to it. Different ways to achieve things, but again, like Anderson was saying, the pumfu and the tofu really absorb flavor from things, and so this can be a really great way to get the flavor embedded in the tofu or the pumfu instead of just fry it and then have it on the outside.
Same thing applies to meat. We could take the same simple sauce, add it to the meat as we're sauteing it, or cut the meat into bite-sized pieces so that we can take it with us and just do the exact same thing. And I'll say the same applies to fish, the same applies to fowl. I'm not as fond of fowl because with the sick fowl that we have, for the most part, it needs to be cooked more than what I consider beneficial. However, for going and just purchasing a rotisserie chicken and having it in your refrigerator is a great thing to have when you come home hungry. That adds to all these other things, and for taking with you. So that's something you don't have to cook and you can purchase at the store.
Well, somehow it happened.
Somehow.
Okay, and we don't have much time left to let this finish cooking because many pieces were flipped early on. The other way I've done this is to turn the heat down for a second while I flip, and then turn it back up just to brown the other side. But I'd say we're pretty good there. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat
I
on.
have an idea.
What is that?
Suppose you were to take the pads of squares of pumfu and just split them so that they're that thick, thinner, and put the whole things in like that,
yeah.
and then cut them up afterwards.
Yeah, and that works too. That
would
works too.
be less flipping of individual pieces
Yeah, you
for
don't
sure.
have to.
Yeah.
each.
If you're doing this, and I think that would work great if you're adding the sauce after. The thing is, not as much flavor ends up getting into
the edges.
the edges.
Yeah, right.
So but if you go with a little more sauce and just allow it to sit in it a little bit more on each side, then it'll absorb a good bit of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You could also cook them in the squares and then cut them in there, and it would get around the sides of it some.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, definitely.
And just try to keep it like spatula-sized flipper, and you might be able to get the whole patty at once, even if it were cut.
Even if it were cut, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking you do both sides of it, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then cut it, and
Sure.
you can
And then get the sauce in it,
stir it or get it on the sides.
Yeah. Well, that looks delicious.
Looks great.
Alrighty.
All right.
Alrighty.
There was our animal and vegan proteins.